Um, he kept on, was very persistent. On our first date, he like rented a fair, like had everybody at the fair, like just shut down everything they were doing and catered to me. When we went out to eat, he told me to get everything on the menu. Everything was so elaborate. It was like Prince Charming. Everything went really fast and quick, and he wanted to get like everything in his name, get me a car in his name. He wanted me to live with him very soon. And coming from what I'd went through, it seemed like the perfect situation. And it was kind of like what happened with ginseng, where I was presented this story of, oh, I'm going to be here for you. I care about you. I'm this bodyguard. And I fell for that. Since I had never had that in my life, I believed it. I thought it was real. And like I said, I had masked my whole life and just kind of lived in my head like a storybook. So I didn't really understand the truth from traps. And I still struggle with that to this day. And I really wanted to believe that this was real. And so we got married. When we got married, almost immediately he started cheating. He was very wealthy and he could get away with anything he wanted. He had a lot of influence and a lot of money. He owned a lot of stuff. And I was just this isolated girl that didn't really have family support and was very vulnerable and trusted him with my whole heart. But he was just used to getting his way, and he would go on these fishing trips. And I got the phone bill and I saw where he'd been calling all these like 1-800 numbers, and then he would call this other number. So I called one of the numbers and I just said, hey, do you know Justin Arnold? And the lady said, yeah, that's my boyfriend. I said, well, that's my husband and I'm pregnant with his child. So please stop, And when I confronted him about that, I was a little over 7 months pregnant with my son. And he got mad that I got the information that I found out, and he pushed me against the counter. I went into labor early, and I had my son early. He was okay, but he had tubes. He was in a breathing machine for a while. And again, when that was the last time I did have interaction with my mom, I told her about what happened. His mom was actually supportive and there for me, but my mind told me the same thing she did when I told her about my stepdad hitting on me. She said, well, he pays the bills. You just need to deal with it. And she took his side, and so did all my aunts. And I said, I'm not staying in a marriage where I'm being cheated on and abused. I'm not going to do it. And I told him I wanted out. And he was like, if you do this, I'm going to tell... He said, I have the judge in my back pocket, just like what the Purple Picket did to me. And he said, I own this town. I'm a big deal. I'm very influential. You will not get away with this. I knew that, but I was not going to live in abuse. So he actually filed for the divorce so he could get a jump on it. And he had his very crooked lawyer, who has been in prison for doing very shady things, come after me. They paid people off to do and say really bad things. I was left with no alimony. He had my own biological mom, 2 of my aunts testify against me in court to say despicable things that were very untrue. I still never lost my children. That's a lie that people that are showing y'all the paperwork from 16 years ago. First of all, they're saying that they know me, but they don't know me. They're getting that paperwork from his wife, and they're friends with her, not me. And they're misleading y'all. These Reddit groups are misleading y'all to believe that they know me, but they don't. They have made this story with his ex-wife, who contacted SLOT and girls from the homeless shelter and did lots of things after over half a decade of not seeing her. But that's later on in the story. But anyway, back to when I first left the marriage. I got completely away. I went to Huntsville, and I was with the kids by myself then for a while. And then we did get to where we had visitations and stuff, where I was raising them as a single mom, but he did have visitation. And then he talked me into coming back to the area so he could help me financially. He had acted like he had all of his stuff back together, that he was going to be there for me. We weren't getting back together as a couple, but I just was coming back to the area so he could be closer to the kids, because since he wanted to be there for them, I wanted to give him the chance. When I came back, that's when things really got bad. I had my own apartment I was paying for, and I was on my own. That's when I got my protection order against him, and we had to live in a place called Safe Place. He was a millionaire, so it took me several times to get this protective order, but this was an instance. It says he had came in at midnight on Sunday, banging on my doors. He broke in my house. He read all my messages. He stole my modem from my computer so he could get all my files and info. And I had proof of all this. I had it filmed. That's why I was able to get the protective order. We had to go stay in a place called Safe Place, and they helped me get all this paperwork. And this is what I had shown Slot and Mama Tot to show them that this had happened. He had lost custody of the kids. From that, we lived in a gated community called Safe Place, and this shows where he actually had them removed from him, not the other way around, from the abuse. And we lived in a place called Safe Place Women's Shelter for a very long time, me and the kids. When we were there, he reported my car stolen, and I had paid for it, but he had put it in his name. And like he said, he knew everybody in the town, so he could get anybody on his side. The judges, the police, everybody went and partied on him and his parents' boat every weekend. So I was just a nobody in a system that was set up for the good old boys, and there was no way to fight any of it. So I had to surrender my vehicle, and me and the kids had to walk to the bus stop in the rain and things like that for a very long time. Him being him and having the money and influence he had, he was able to get out of it and eventually get them back, and we went back to the schedule that we had with the custody because I did not have the money to fight him. And all I wanted to do was just be successful, be there, protect them the way I could, do what I could. So I went back to school, tried to get my education. I got my education. I got my Bachelor of Arts, and I wanted to keep going. So I was working on a master's in mental health counseling. That's when everything started falling apart. I was really having trouble from masking my autism, not yet having my diagnosis at the time. I had went to specialists all over trying to figure out what was going on, but I did not have very good insurance. So at first they had thought that I might have multiple sclerosis because I was having so many issues, sensory issues, especially driving and stuff. My sensory issues were so bad that I was like getting pulled over and I was completely sober, or I was like everything was just going to shit because I had been masking for so long. And that was the time that I got my diagnosis. I was completely cut off from every friend that I had because of the abuse. Every family member was on his side. I didn't have anybody standing by me, but I still worked to get my education. I was still raising my kids at that time. He just had visitation. They were in the house with me. I was at every single baseball game. I was at every single thing that they had. I supported them. I did the best that I could, but I was still just a trapped child that had not healed from abuse myself. I did not have a lot of knowledge about things. I was not dealing with things healthy at all. I didn't know how. I was just a ticking time bomb. And at the time of my diagnosis, the man was let go for inappropriate behavior. I did go and I went through the whole process. I was told that I had what was called Asperger's, and then it was known as ASD at this time. And then when I went back to get the information, he had been let go for inappropriate behavior. I had called and checked all these details. The only other thing I had ever been diagnosed with was chronic PTSD because of the abuse from my marriage. It's all on file. There is no other diagnosis for bipolar or borderline. Do I think that I might have established more mental health issues while I was homeless? Probably. And I'm willing to get help for those things when I get insurance with work. But this story that has been made up by these false family members is all just completely made up.